Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Matt Skidmore Show. And we are live today with a very special guest, Badrun Khan, who you may remember because she ran for Congress in the same district that AOC currently represents. And now she has set her sights on a new office, this time New York City Council, District 26. Badrun, welcome to the show. Thank you very much for coming on.
Matt, thank you. It's great to be back. I'm so excited with the show today.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you on. There's a lot of news going on. Before we get to talking really about anything to do with your campaign, I want to first get your reaction to the news that came out last night about Governor Cuomo. A second woman, one of his former aides, has come out and said that the governor sexually harassed them while working under him. What are your thoughts and kind of your reaction to the news last night?
The reaction was really shocking because during the pandemic time, he did help with the COVID and the situation. I know there's still negative actions with the nursing homes, but it was something that so just as a New Yorker, we know Cuomo's family for years, who's been in the political area all the time. I think every allegation should be taken seriously, and every allegation should be investigated to see what the truth is, what's behind it. I don't think it should just be dropped. And that's what my opinion is. The woman came out, and I think every woman should come out if there's any allegation from any political leader. Everybody should be known, and every investigation should be done. Me being a female, I feel people's pain. It's hardship coming out there. And then if you're harassed at work in any level, investigation should be done and to see where this allegation goes forward.
Yeah. Do you think that if ultimately there's a lot of calls right now for an independent investigation, some are even calling for the attorney general to lead the investigation. Do you think ultimately if it's found out that these allegations are true, he should step down?
Oh, definitely. If it's true, of course he should step down. Why would I totally support that. If this allegation comes out, it is true. He needs to be prosecuted first of all, and then it should be he should step down. But also from his side, he's been in the political world for such a long time. There has to be both. We have to give them the benefit of the doubt until the investigation is completed.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about your run for city council now. I mentioned in the open that you had originally ran for Congress in AOC's district. You came up short, but I remember watching the debate, and there was another candidate. Her name was Michelle Caruso Cabrera. She's now running, I think, for comptroller in citywide there in New York City. But I remember AOC actually complimented you. She was like, me and Badrun are the only ones here who actually have any real policies on our website. So while you were running, technically against AOC and certainly had a lot of disagreements with her, I think, both of you, this is my perspective, had, I think, your heart's in the right place in the terms of you wanted to represent the people. And to me, it seems natural now that you would kind of shift your focus and that energy into moving to city council. But why did you decide to make that transition, decide to say, you know what, I came up short for Congress, but I think I can still make a difference in local office?
Oh, definitely. First of all, AOC was really great just debating with her. She gave me the respect as an individual, and the policies were more important. I'm not coming to get my fame or name out there. I came in for I felt the people needed people, someone like myself or someone who actually thinks about the people. And when I did my election, it was a very hard time. COVID just hit, and it was really hard to get out there. You couldn't knock on doors. You can get the train stations were pretty much dead because we're on lockdown. And one thing I'll say, even with her, MCC was a little bit different. We're talking about the people. Like COVID was the biggest epicenter in the whole nation. And I live 10 minutes away by car. So that's what I thought. I'm like, I tried my best, and I want to give that same energy into my District 26. We also have the same issue. We still have small business did not get any funding. We also have the same housing issues that I spoke about. So basically, running for Congress is more of federal level, high level. But I think the city needs people like us. Whoever is running, there are like 20 people running. I think it should be about the people, not who I am, what I am. How can I engage in the community, and how can I speak for the people? Because I always said that in my other election, that you're hiring me to speak for you. But we need to make sure we understand what you believe in. How can we accomplish the situation right now with no jobs, people having lack of food, people have insecurity of food. Medical has been pretty well. We still have short vaccines. My husband has heart issue. I can't get a vaccine for him because there's no appointments. So that's what I decided. I did late. I registered late. I registered in November. And I said, you know what? I want to put my energy back where I could actually help. And being that pretty much my name is well known in the community because I did make a difference. So that's what I thought. People did recognize me. Even when I actually announced it in Twitter, I got a lot of compliments saying, Badrun, thanks for coming. I just don't want to be a person that run for election, I didn't win, and I just go away. Winning or not, I want to be part of this community.
Mm-hmm. When you say you mentioned a lot of the small businesses and families and just a lot of people struggling right now, especially in New York City compared to other parts of the country, you know, like I think New York City's unemployment rate is still like close to maybe double that of the national average. Yeah. So there's just a lot of people struggling out there. What are your policy ideas in terms of what New York City can do? Because it's a little different when you're running for Congress, you know, in terms of what the federal government can accomplish and what city government can accomplish. I know despite that, there are some multiple mayoral candidates running on universal basic income. Carlos Menchaca's one, Diane Morales is one, of course, Andrew Yang is one. And so when I was checking out your website, it was very good to see universal basic income was on there. How do you see that you'd be able to work with the next mayor if you were in city council to pass universal basic income and get this life-changing money into people's hands in New York City?
Well, universal basic income is needed right now, definitely for families who's struggling, families who's not unemployment. Some unemployment is $188. Like usually, I spoke to a lot of these cab drivers are having a hard time because their income wasn't as that much. So that universal basic income will help them just to feed their families, just to pay rent, just to have a cell phone going, because that is something that I will push. I hope who wins the mayor election. I do have a candidate. I wish he wins, but that is something I want to work with. Even if not any mayor comes in, I actually want to be a person that will support that universal basic income. And it will help every community, not just one community. People who are like a battered woman who's having this situation would help them. People who are single moms, single dads. It will ultimately help everyone. That's what I think. So I'll be a big advocate about it. I still am. And I still talk about it. But we need to have more people who need to be educated. And that's a big one in my district. And I think a lot of people in my district do support it.
Yeah. Well, that certainly makes me happy to hear that a lot of people in your district do support it, because I'm a big fan of universal basic income myself. So, yeah. But I want to, on a kind of a different topic, but related to COVID-19, one of the effects that we've seen, unfortunately, is a lot of people, perhaps due to rhetoric from a certain president, have associated coronavirus and COVID-19 with Asian Americans. And we've seen a disturbing rise of attacks. Like just this past week, I'm sure you saw there was a 36-year-old man stabbed in the back unprovoked in Chinatown. I mean, it's just like it's disturbing, like the size of the blade and all that. And it's just there was a woman, she got pushed into a mailbox, Asian lady, and had to get like 12 stitches on her head. Just really terrible stuff. And I know there's a high Asian population in Queens. What plans would you have in city council to try to protect these communities that are facing this increased threat level that they shouldn't really have to be dealing with?
Well, I think it started with the president calling it a certain a community virus. That was totally unprofessional of him. And targeting any group of communities is very, very difficult. Being that if I'm elected, I'll be the first female Muslim. So I also seen how it is to be affected or targeted by people because of your religion, your race. And I think, first of all, in city council, that should be something top of the line that nobody, anyone should ever been attacked or said something because of their race or their culture or their religion or how they look like. That is something I'm totally against, being that I know the suffering that people did after 9/11. And in city council, there should be a big issue with that, or a policy that anyone who is attacked under these bases should be arrested and should be prosecuted. And it should be presented into the community that you just cannot go attack people just because of your race. And that started from the Trump administration, because he targeted people like that. And that's something should not happen right now. And even when you go to the police department, that also should be said that if it doesn't matter what you are, who you are, you should protect every civilian, because that's your job.
Yeah.
You cannot pick and say, well, I like this person, I like that person. So city council will have a big issue with that, because what's happening to the Asian community is extremely sad. And being that I'm Muslim, I understand how it was during 9/11, how people got attacked. I could feel their pain and their suffering.
Yeah. On a similar related note, when it comes to the issue of police, it gets very controversial. You have a lot of different rhetoric on all sides of the issue. There's people that say, police. There's people who say like defund the police, but then there's confusion over what defund the police actually means. To me, defund the police means you cut some of the budget and put that money elsewhere. Then there's like abolish the police, which is get rid of the police completely. There's other people who are like, well, if the idea is we need to reform the police, shouldn't we be spending more money to train them better? So it's a very complicated issue, but I want to know what your thoughts are on it, because it's definitely something that you would have to deal with in city council in terms of how to make sure the NYPD is best equipped to protect the citizens there in New York City.
Well, you know what? There's a lot of confusion when you guys. Everyone says exactly defund the police. All the funding goes somewhere else. One thing I do want to say, that they do have a lot of military equipment that needs to stop. We don't need that in this. And that's that's a chunk of funding. Being that I'm a budget person, I'm a financial controller. I think that's a big amount of budget that needs to be reallocated to other portions. Let's say to education. Also, to be in the prison, that needs to be allocated to prison, and to make sure these prisoners who are there get a benefit when they leave, or some sort of an education when they leave, that they have a job to go to. That's something that I also look very much into. And I think training wise, even if you cut the budget, there's enough budget to get more training. 6 months of training is not enough. And there's certain things that I think needs to be moved away from the police department. Say there's a lot of in the corner, if there's mental health problems with people that do not need a police, maybe someone who has some sort of education in the mental health world. We need to invest more in that. Take that funding and put it to there. So the thing is, when you're defunding the police, people are saying you're taking all the money away. Yes, we need to allocate certain funds to certain departments, but also to make sure that the police department is getting educated properly, to make sure they're treating every civilian, like I said, in proper manner. And they're also being looked at. It's like you need to see from both sides, their perspective of it and my perspective as a civilian. But I would like the police department to get more training in a little of mental. When you treat someone, when you talk to someone, talk to them with certain sort of respect. Not everybody you arrest are horrible people. It could be a first time incident they had, or even a domestic violence incident they have. So I think when you talk about defunding, I think it's allocating some of the funds to other places, but making sure the police department also get rigorous training on how to treat people and how to treat anyone. And the biggest training I think they need to get is community wise. Work with the community. Maybe the community to help. I know my person who I go to, make sure they know who you are. Make sure you understand the community. You're just not driving around and you're just seeing, but I think that needs to be worked. You need to be part of the community, you need to know a couple of the people in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely think one issue with and this to me, this isn't even an issue in police, it's an issue in society in general, is we just don't treat our fellow human beings with enough humanity. So it's like the police, when they see somebody who's a drug addict like acting crazy on the street, and they get called to pick them up, and it turns into some, I mean, I saw a video of this maybe like 2 weeks ago in New York City, where they were like, oh, he's just like a junkie, and the police were like, it just kind of treating him like some sort of like failure of a person, rather than like a human being that deserves dignity. And that's something that we don't just see in police, we see in society in general. So I don't know, like there's a lot of ways that that can be solved on a policing issue, but in terms of that issue, like specifically in terms of just treating people better, that's something that we just got to do better as a country, in my opinion. Yeah.
Even ourselves, like just ourselves, when you see someone like that who's a drug addict in the corner, how do you treat them? Do you talk to them? Do you walk away? You just like, I totally get, because I work in the South Bronx, so I see a lot of these people. And I see how people are just like walking, like, absolutely. I think we need to teach people how to train everyone, and just to how to accept these people. Some people, they're just illnesses they have.
Yeah. Yeah. You mentioned that you're a budget person for a living. And one of the things that has been impacting New York City, as well as, again, cities really all across the country, is just having these really tight budget shortfalls. And at the same time, when so many people are struggling, you just keep having to spend, cities and localities, they keep having to spend more and more money that they really don't have. And it's just leading to these budget crunches. And then at the same time, this is me looking at it like, you have people saying, well, we need to, I see this in the mayoral race. There's some candidates who are saying like, hey, we need to raise taxes. And I'm thinking, well, if you're already having a budget shortfall, and one of the issues is like all the rich people that pay all the high taxes are leaving New York City. If you like raise the taxes more, can't they just like leave New York City still? And then that's going to further depreciate the tax base. It seems like a very complicated issue. You're the budget person. So what do you think, if you were in city council, you would look for in terms of trying to get creative in terms of funding lots of different projects, including like a universal basic income?
So see, with the universal basic income, you know, is VAT tax. So increasing people with their purchases, high level purchases, that will give you like amount of funding that you can get from like high end products. So that's something that would be incorporate into the budget. So being a financial controller is always that you allocate budget simply in various programs, right? So which program has an excess of funding? So let's see if we can move it here. Taxes is something, a very sensitive issues right now, because the problem is you have to earn income to pay taxes. A lot of people are not even earning income. And I think some of the corporations too actually needs to come in and help the community, the cities they're living in, because they do not pay a lot of taxes. And I think they need to come in and pay certain taxes a little high level to help the city go back on their feet. Right now, the biggest issue also, the small businesses also are not paying taxes because the doors are shut. If you walk down 2 blocks from my neighborhood, you'll see 5, 6 stores who are shut down. They pay taxes, so you're not getting all these taxes. So how can I would like to do a program, give these small businesses some grants to reopen their businesses. Because right now, person to go back, get rent, they don't have the funds to reopen the business. So maybe as a city council, I would want to say, let's do a startup program so we could get all these small businesses back on their feet. So look, you give jobs, they're paying small amount of taxes, but the people who are working are paying small amount of taxes. Right now, you're getting neither. So these are small things. You know what? At first, you're funding them, but at the ending, if you go up 6 months down the road, you're gaining money back because the door is open. You're getting 4 people to work, just like the barbershop. Just for an example, on Nelson, they have about 5 or 6 people. You give them certain startup funds to reopen their store. You get a small corporation working or a small business working, you get 5 people to work, you're having taxes. So it goes back into the city, the community, and that's how I think we need to start. And taxes right now is, first of all, people more concerned how we get jobs back to the city. The hotel industry is, people don't have work. The taxi and limousine services don't have work. People are too scared to go out. So it's just not one aspect. We have to figure out how to do it in every aspect. So grant is going to be a big issue to restart a startup so we could do startup back so people could go back to work after we get the vaccine, which is we're not having.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned the vaccine. What do you think the solution should be there? Because I asked this question to Yenny DeRoche. I mentioned to you before we started last week about how there's basically right now whites are getting the vaccine at a way higher rate than the ratio of their population than like African Americans and Latinos and Asians, despite the fact that it was minorities who got hit harder than COVID in the first place. So I call it they got hit on the front end, and now they're getting hit again on the back end. What do you think the city should do to try to fix that?
Well, I think the city should open more centers in the rural area, like the areas that are minority based. Like, for example, in the Bronx, they have to do it in the community. They have to do it in Jackson Heights, where there's they need to do it Chinatown. They need to do it in Flushing. These are the places that they should have centers. I think that's important because absolutely, like my community got almost 700 people who died. And basically, they're in the Queens community that I live in. In the Bronx, I have a community who actually, that's where I think the vaccine should be allocated in small, like even when you're getting testing done right now, it's sort of the line is like around the block. Like it's still hard to get a test done. There's a big one in Northern Boulevard. You can't wait online. You're waiting online for 2 hours. And I think these places should have vaccines. And I see the smaller hospitals or the clinics should be given vaccines to the community that actually took the hard hit. Which I'm telling you, I'm having difficulties trying to get my husband to get a vaccine. I called every state, every place that I have. I even went all the way up to Stony Brook because he has heart condition and we can't get it.
Who do you think bears responsibility right now for the issues with the vaccine rollout? Is it something that it's the mayor should be doing better? Is it the governor? Is it the federal government? Because I'm just not too familiar, honestly, with what exactly. Like to me, it seems very simple. Like it seems very simple to you should be able to find the areas that were hardest hit by COVID. That's where the vaccine you should have. Testing and vaccines, like there shouldn't be 2-hour lines. It just seems very crazy to me that exists. Why is this happening?
Because I think we don't have enough vaccines to give out. That's an issue. I think that's the problem. We need to make more and we need to have more products. And I think right now, I think the mayor and the governor should work together and make sure the two people should work together and make sure the vaccine are allocated in these communities. That I think should be both of their jobs, not who. I think both should say, you know what? Jackson Heights had the biggest event with the epicenter. We need to vaccinate in that area. We need to give it to Elmore's Hospital. We need to give it to these places. I think it has to be both of them to work with it.
Yeah, I think that's the right answer. I hear a lot of people in New York City that they just say they're tired of de Blasio and Cuomo like fighting with each other like children. And it's like, you guys, it's crazy. To me, in general, one of the things that sucked the most during COVID is that we just seemed to have no leadership anywhere. We didn't have leadership at the presidential level. We didn't have leadership in many different states. Like we find out, while some in the media felt like Cuomo was doing a good job early, and maybe he was in some regards, we found out about the New York City nursing homes and how that was mishandled. And perhaps you want to speak on that a bit yourself. But people know already about the red state governors. So that's why I think it's important. Like people got to remember how I know sometimes people take like government for granted or like, oh, it doesn't matter. But then you see like a real crisis, like a real crisis, like COVID-19 and everything that has happened in the past year. And you realize how important it is to have people in government that just have some basic level of like competence. So,
Well, I agree with you. The way they bicker, I don't find that comfortable. It's just they should not. They should work together, and they have their bickering. They should do it not in front of people. They do not like each other. I believe that one when I speak to them. But one thing I have to say, that the nursing home was struck really hard. I even knew, because my father was going to end up in one nursing home. We actually forced him to come home. That nursing home took a big hit. Almost 65 people actually passed away. And from Como's side, he did inform as much, because me as just a community person, just to know, we made sure we turn on the television just to find out certain idea. He did that very well. He communicated, but you know what? He didn't do enough resources to other places. That was the problem. His most things were the hospitals, and didn't give enough information. And then the school shutting down, the school coming up, mayor wants the school open. It was so much bickering, and that makes it uncomfortable. Whoever is the mayor, upcoming mayor, I would love to say that they need to work together with every branch of government, whoever they are. You have an issue with them, but you don't want the people who supported you, put you in office, and now we're uncomfortable seeing these two people who's supposed to represent us are not getting along, and they have certain issues. They should mend their issues and make sure the issue that's in front should be more important.
Yeah, I want to ask you about education. One of the issues that's gotten a lot of attention recently is the issue where a lot of schools are disproportionate in terms of the number of, like, basically the amount of Latinos and African Americans that are in the schools compared to like whites and Asians. It gets man, a lot of these issues in New York City, as I'm sure you know better than I do, get very, very controversial and very mixed up. But there's basically like a school like Stuyvesant High School. Basically it's like the special like technical
high
schools.
School, the Brooklyn Science, and all those schools, the three most.
Yeah, there's just basically you look at the numbers, and there's just compared to the city's population, there's not a lot of kids from like Black communities and Latino communities, and and I know like some people have had solutions where they want to say like, well, maybe we should add more schools. Then other people say, well, if we just add more schools, it's just going to lead to more schools that don't have that are just filled with kids who are already like the same kids who are already at the schools in the first place. Oops, my mic, my audio is unplugged. How do you think that that's an issue that can be solved? Like, how do you see that?
Okay, so I also think that, let's go back to budget. I think the areas that the minority areas, so let's say a couple of schools, don't have enough resources, I think. So basically, they don't have programs or prep programs in these schools. And if you go to basically the white neighborhood, would say those have better schooling, better teachers, and that's what needs to change. I think in those neighborhoods, we need to get more resources, prep programs, better teachers, after school programs. So you know what? These kids have the opportunity to be there too, which I think they have lack of that opportunity. We're going back to the allocations of budgets. The schools that always does good gets more funding. No, we need to put more funding to those schools. Why are they below grade reading level? Why are they below math levels? We need to justify every school to see how can we bring those schools back up and see why is the issues of the students not doing the grade level. But if you go to another neighborhood who's, let's say a white neighborhood, for example, why are they doing better? What is the difference? Compare. And see what they have prep schools, they have programs. We don't have that in program in a certain school. Like there's another neighborhood that I know of that brilliant students, but they don't have enough resources. They don't have good teachers. We need to fund those schools in the areas that need the funding. And we need to place better teachers there.
Yeah.
And we need to have mixtures of teachers. And I also noticed something. I think we need to have mix of teachers. People need to go into the rural neighborhood, not just I want to just be there. We, as the teachers union or teachers, everyone, they need to allocate the teachers in every neighborhood. Look, I'm a big teacher fan because, why am I here today? I have always respect their teacher's job. It's a very difficult job to do. And nowadays, you teach kids, they're different. When I grew up, I didn't have an iPad. I didn't have YouTube. I didn't have a lot of challenging what we learned and what we learn in school. Nowadays, they learn of these information. So these teachers have to make sure they understand how the students think. And I think there's more training, and especially the neighborhoods that needs to get more funding.
Yeah.
As a city council, I would allocate a lot of funds to these schools, and learning disabilities have no money.
Mm-hmm.
They need to get more funding.
Yeah. Another issue that's facing New York City, unfortunately, and you mentioned it on your campaign website, is that homelessness is basically at like a recent record level, like at any point kind of in the past like a few decades. What do you think the city should be doing to get these people not only off the streets, but put some, not just like, just because it was one thing like, oh, like I basically, it goes back to what I was talking about earlier with the treating people like humans thing. It's like the homeless people aren't like a problem. Like they're that they're on the street. We just need to get rid of them. They're human beings that like they need to be treated with dignity and hopefully be put into like care and or like some sort of like, because a lot of homeless people are struggling with like drug addiction. So whether it's like a rehab facility, what do you think the solution should be there, and how would you make it so that it's not just like making the home like, oh, instead of having the homeless people on the street, we'll just put them over here where nobody will see them. But there's those, as people, they're still struggling with the same issues that they dealt with when they were on the street.
So homeless has become increasingly bad in New York City. I see them right here next to my house, which we didn't see them 5 years ago. First of all, there's a lot of things happening with that. People cannot afford the rent. That's one thing. And not all homeless people are drug addicts. There's just some family who lost their job, couldn't afford to pay rent. Some people are like, I see someone who's totally like a person who had a job, lost his job, couldn't afford it, and he became homeless. And some do have mental issues, drug issues. We need to find appropriate places for these people. People who just lost their home, couldn't get a job, we need to have universal rent control. That has to be done. People can afford it. That's one thing. And as I said before, we need better mental health clinic. We need to actually find these people who are on the street who need help and try to give them help. Not just putting them anywhere, just get a hotel and put them in there. Because you know what? It's not treating the problem. You're minimizing the problem for the time being, but we need to think about it more of a future. How can we help this person? We need more therapy for them. We need to do like a program where we could help these people get on their feet, let go of drugs. And that's also, drugs is a big issue with these homeless, with most of the people I've noticed. And I would want to make sure I do a program for them where they can get help and they could get cleaned and treat them with as a human being, not that your life doesn't matter. It does matter. It matters to everybody. And the people who are suffering for homes, we need to make housing better. And I just don't believe, like, some of the homeless people are placed in hotels. Why should we put them in hotels? We have a lot of apartment buildings that are empty. We need to give them a structure that they have a home to go to, not in a 2-bedroom with 2 kids. We need to make sure we put them in a home where they could actually go back, feel better about themselves. Like, I have an apartment, I could cook for my kids, I could do certain things, because there's a lot of empty apartments and these people living in hotels with 2 kids, which is not fair. So what happened? They're not part of the community. They're just there for the time being to see what we can do. We're trying to put a facade in front of everything. Like, we're perfect, we're going to clean them up, but it's not cleaning. 2 things: mental health program needs to increase, universal rent control needs to increase, so people know that they are part of a community.
Yeah. One of the crazy stats I saw, I mean, you mentioned,
Matt, I can't hear you.
Oops, sorry, I was muted. I was saying, you mentioned the city like putting like people up in hotels like during COVID to try to keep them like from infecting, like spreading the virus like out in like these like homeless like camps like with the tents and stuff where the virus gets spread really easily. And the city was paying apparently like $150 or whatever a night for these hotels. And apparently I was reading, this is a crazy stat to me, it's like basically the New York City is actually spending like $6,000 a month for the average family of 4 that's homeless, which is just crazy because like you can like get rent even in New York City, like you can get rent for well under $6,000 in a certain part, like in the city. Like this just doesn't, like, I don't. So you're a budget person again. How is this happening?
I totally agree with you. I have that issue all the time. So I have a hotel right next to me that they have a family in there, right? And it's like 2 beds. It's like just a common hotel, and it's like and 4 people live there, 2 beds. They don't have what they go into. They don't go outside. There's no park. They're in and out. And I do not understand why they do this. And I agree that's something we need to change. So that family could be in a housing that we have empty. And that will save the city funding. We could make that the funding they're giving to that hotel, we could actually give that funding for their more benefits, for them to get more programs, to start job searching. And that budget needs to allocate somewhere else. Going back to that budget, I totally disagree with what they're doing, Matt, because you have a family and 4 kids and you're staying in the hotel room. Those kids don't have, it's not a ground for them, because they don't see parents cooking or anything. They don't see a dinner table. They don't see something just sitting in the kitchen and just hanging out. It's one small room and paying every month. You could put those people in a nice apartment, which the city have tons of them empty. And there are city buildings, and there are private half city buildings. And we could give that funding to them for more programs. And that will be something that I would be very big on. We don't need to pay these hotels money to keep them. We need to find apartments for these families. And if you do have a shelter for mental health clinics, that's what they're saying. But the mental health clinics needs to be treated, because if you're in a hotel room, right, and if you have mental issues, what programs are there you're helping them? Are there any programs? No. You're just giving them to say, and they're gonna go out and find. So I don't appreciate the hotel things. I don't think it's fixing the problem. It's making it more of a problem.
Yeah, I mean, this is what Tamari says. Just like give people UBI. I'm just like, why is the city paying $6,000 when they could just get, like, for these people to live in a hotel? They could just give them like each $1,000 a month or whatever, and they'd be much better off, in my opinion. But
you do, but also you have to understand the rental is really expensive, so the city needs to provide their.
Yeah, well, I will. This is what I want to ask next is what do you think of this idea? It's been proposed by Catherine Garcia, who's running for mayor, and of course Andrew Yang, who's running for mayor, which is to, instead of having these people in hotels, why doesn't the city just buy the hotels that are 92% unoccupied in like Manhattan and just convert them into affordable housing, like, and just have it be part of NYCHA? Because like, I mean, it seems like a better idea than spending money to have them. Like, if you're going to be putting them in the hotels anyways, you may as well just buy the hotels and convert it into housing. Like, it seems like a better idea. And I mean, especially considering like a lot of it seems to me like a lot of people, when they talk about the issue of affordable housing, they talk in terms of like, oh, we need to change like this incentive or like do this so this developer does this. But like, that's not going to solve the issue of affordable housing now. Like, people are out on the street now. We don't have like 2-3 years for developers to like get their acts together. So I don't like, what do you think of that solution?
First of all, NYCHA, there's a lot of issue with NYCHA, you know that, right? People want to privatize them, totally against privatizing them, right? I agree if we purchase them and you could purchase it, but how about the ones that are still empty right now? We do have a lot of city properties that most of the apartments are empty. We need to find the ones, we need a list of all the apartments that are empty and put these people in there, first of all, and then purchase the ones that we don't have. And a lot of affordable housing are being built. There's one in Long Island City, it says affordable housing, but it's like $1,900 rent, $2,200 rent.
It's not really affordable.
It's not affordable. That's what I'm saying. We need to find, what are the buildings NYCHA has? But NYCHA has a lot of issues too. If you see NYCHA's having problem with, I want NYCHA to purchase these homes, but first let's fix NYCHA first. NYCHA has people who are living in invested, like cockroach infested buildings. We have problems with rats in the buildings. We have problems there. They're chipping, lead poisoning. We need to make sure NYCHA, if they purchase these properties, first we need to make sure that the ones that are currently don't have a lot of issues. Some people don't have heat. Like I remember last year, I was trying to give out heat to people. Like we need to make sure before we purchase more things, let's make sure NYCHA is doing the job for the people who are in there, because we're going to keep on adding to the buildings, but are they going to be taken care of?
Yeah. Well, Tamar, he agrees with you. He said Miss Khan is right. Long term, it's better for families and taxpayers. And it looks like someone from your congressional district is here. 3 Nico says, happy to see Badrun here. I hope for her in my district. So he was a supporter, it looks like. But I guess I feel like we've covered a lot of different policies. If there was one area that I think that I'd want to ask you about, it'd be climate change, because to me, again, it's one of those issues where without like the help of the federal government, I just don't know what cities are really supposed to do, because climate change, it's not like it's coming, it's already here. Like the effects of climate change, we're already seeing it. And I'm sure like, whether it's Hurricane Sandy and the flooding that we saw with that, people like these storms are just going to keep on happening. It's going to keep on getting worse. What do you think with the limited resources that the city has? What can the city do in terms of trying to protect people and make New York City more resilient to climate change?
Well, I think also it's a big thing. A lot of people are not understanding. I think a lot of education is needed, and not only for me, but every community. I think a lot of people do not understand how can they help with climate change. I think that's in every community. There are some communities who just are understanding, don't understand what can they do. And I think that's a big thing that I've noticed when I speak to a couple of my community members. Oh, what can we do? It's the federal government. No, you can do that because the buildings are coming up now. We want to make them green. We want to make sure, like in Brooklyn, I used to work for someone, we made the roof more green and more effective. Put plants, trees, take care of them. I mean, little simple things I think we can do. Yes, we need the federal government to help, but I think as a city, as a very big city, we need to invest more in ourselves on a daily basis. How can we help? Even with the garbages, how can we distribute, make sure we don't buy certain things that would affect to more climate change. I think that in education, that has to be done, because I think that's something, it's not happening, even in school. Like, certain things that will affect to the climate change. Everything has to affect from the federal government, but city-wise, it needs to be educated more, allocated more, talked about more, that how can we change these effects. And if I go to city council, everything should be green and everything should help. How can we need to work towards climate change. That's what we need to do.
Yeah. One final question before I ask how people can learn more and help out your campaign. I want to get your opinion / your thoughts on reopenings and the issue, I guess, of locking down businesses. Do you think right now the New York City, like specifically restaurants, the percentage of dining is too low? And do you think it should be increased? And kind of like, how do you see the reopenings in general, like of schools and other like entertainment bars and things like that?
Well, I think we need to slowly reopen, but actually we have to see how much we vaccinated. That's also an important thing. I'm comfortable right now with the 25% going into the restaurant, but I have noticed most people I know I want everybody still to wear the mask. And especially when you go to the grocery stores. And like I saw a person like touching everything with their bare hands. Try to be more careful when you touch certain things so people I don't know if you have it or not. That's also something that we have to be more careful about. Like, let's just buying fruits from the streets. And I think people have to be more careful with that. We need to open school slowly, because I have seen how students are not handling this very well. Middle school kids. I'm not worried about the high school. I'm more worried about the younger kids who are actually suffering. Because you have to understand, they're on the iPad from 8:30 in the morning to 3 o'clock. The effect is of teaching them, it's not comfortable, because I have a nephew who's 5 and I have another niece who's at 6, and it's really difficult for them. They don't want to be on the phone. So their parents who are home are actually sitting right there and trying to see what they're doing. And slowly, But I want to make sure that if we get the vaccine, that will be something that I will make it comfortable, and we should slowly open. Just a daily life. I think more mental health issues coming up. People are just like literally bored, not seeing anybody, not going out, going to the park. It's just going for a walk. It's just becoming a hardship, and I think people are getting sick too. And I feel that it's a crisis that we need to slowly start. But again, we need to vaccinate more.
Yeah. Well, Badrun, I really appreciate you coming on and talking with us about your campaign, your second appearance here on the Mask Give More show. For those who are watching who want to learn more and perhaps help out your campaign, maybe even leave a donation for those of you who are watching, hint, hint, wink, wink. What is your website and how can people get involved? Like, are you doing like phone banking, text banking? Is there any like in-person volunteering with COVID? I'm not sure how that exactly works.
Well, my website is the same thing, www.badrunkhan.com. Please donate, and I need a lot of volunteers. We are doing the petitions. Next week, petition starts, and I need any help I can get. As you know, Governor Cuomo didn't reduce all the
well, I forgot about that. Yeah, that's so for those who don't know, in New York, they've been trying to switch it so that they don't have to collect like in-person signatures to get on the ballot. But the Governor Cuomo, again, who has really not been on point with things lately, he didn't want that to happen. So you need help getting enough signatures, is what you're saying.
Yeah, so we need help. So the unfortunate problem is people who did a lot of help and volunteers, but this is in person. So
yeah, that's the thing.
That's the thing. It's in person. So what we did is any volunteers or whoever, any interns who want to come in. So what we did is, like, I'm going to be on the streets, my family, friends who I know, we're giving them everything that we possibly can. The N95s, we're giving them masks, we're giving them pens. If people walk away, you don't need to bring the pens back. That's the only way we can do it because it has to be in person. And we're very disappointed that that didn't go away because that is still a risk. For anyone. And so what we did is we call family members. We're trying to see, but because you can't go into the buildings, you know that, right? You don't know how to send someone into the building. So it's a very hardship. And then you're at the trains, you're at the streets, but you are talking to people. You don't know how it is, but I need help as much as I can get. We are getting some volunteers. We're going to hit the streets on Tuesday. I think that's when it starts. We need about 250. And most of the candidates requested Cuomo to eliminate all the signature because of the high risk of catching COVID and being the vaccine wasn't around. And I think he should have done that to make it safe because there's going to be a lot of people out there because in every district, I'll tell you, there's almost 50 seats open, right? So each seat's had 5 to 6 people running. So everybody's going to be on the street.
Yeah. Cuomo, my personal opinion, I'm not a big fan of Cuomo, so it doesn't surprise me that he would make it harder for new people to get into office. Because for somebody like him, my opinion again, who's a career politician, it's more beneficial for him to have a bunch of people who have always been there and not have new people who are trying to change things get in. So
I think that, just to tell you, we need to change city council this time. It cannot be a career-wise politician, even in the mayor election. I think it has to be different. We need to change that aspect of everyone who has a political background needs to go back, and it has to be changed. It has to be people from different community. It needs to be diverse. It needs to be from every aspect of any individual, even if it's city council, even if it's the mayor. It should not be only people who had a political career for years. I would love to do that in this mayor election, and people need to register to vote, and people need to come out and share their opinions.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Badrun, I really appreciate you coming on. It was a pleasure to talk with you, and we wish you the best of luck in your race. So
it was great to come back. Please come and visit my website, everyone. And thank you, Matt, for having me on the show. It was great.
Yes, badrunkhan.com, BADRUNKHAN.com. All right, I got it. Take care.